Good afternoon. My name is Harish Karnick. I'm a retired professor of computer science from IIT Kanpur. Firstly, I'm sorry that I cannot be present in person. Uh, I am one of the signatories to the notice that has been sent to the Election Commission, and I'm here to essentially tell you why I signed that notice. Uh, I have been an academic for over 40 years now, and I look upon the electoral system as a complete system. And I'm going to point out some kinds of problems that I saw as an academic. If I were to design that system and I were to run that system, how would I have done? And I try to compare that with the way the election commission has behaved in the elections that have happened recently. And the difference and the dogged insistence of the election commission on certain things which are fairly simple to agree to, uh, and the lack of transparency in uh, giving data out to the general public and to the candidates and so on, and the strange kinds of uh, discrepancies that are there, uh, makes me extremely uncomfortable. I'm not claiming here because I do not have direct proof that there has been manipulation, or I don't know really whether there has been manipulation or not. But the series of actions of the election commission, uh, make me very uncomfortable, and that's the main reason that I have signed that particular notice. And I want to expand a little bit on that. Uh, First, a disclaimer, I am not even going to touch upon various other parts of the election process where there have been violations. There have been blatant violations of the Model Code of Conduct. There has been voter suppression, both in the form of people not being on the electoral rolls who should have been there, and intimidation on the day of voting when people who were trying to vote were not allowed to vote. I mean, there have been enough instances of that which have been recorded and have been there in the media of kinds. I'm not going to touch on that really. I'm only going to concentrate on the small subsystem, which is the operational part of the election, which is the actual voting process, the counting process, and the transparency related to it regarding the data, and also the discrepancies, which are very strange, number one. And number two, absolutely no explanations regarding why they could have happened. I mean, okay, things can go wrong, and one of the things that one would like to do when things go wrong is to be open about it and say, okay, this is why this discrepancy has come about, and explain why it has happened in a detailed way. None of that has been done, and that is what worries me. Why is it that this kind of, I mean, the election is the core of the democratic process, and why is it that there is so much hesitancy to tell us what exactly went wrong? Okay, first of all, let's look at the fundamental principle. I, as a voter, intend to vote for some candidate. My intention is recorded. Okay. I should be able to verify that record. And then that is the record which should be counted. That is an elementary, it's a fundamental principle, right? Now, why is it that there are two records? Okay. As a matter of fact, the VVPAT was introduced into this whole voting system precisely because of this lacuna. And why is it now that you allow me to see for 7 seconds in the VVPAT box? And I don't know how many people are actually able to see it. I don't think there's any data or any empirical verification of how many actually people, how many voters. There'll be illiterate people, there'll be older people, and so on. How many of them actually verify that the slip contains whatever they have pressed? I mean, the name and the symbol of the candidate that they voted for. But let's keep that aside for the moment. But there are two records. There's a record which I'm supposed to have verified, which is what falls into the VVPAT, and there is a record which goes into the control unit, which is the vote recorded electronically. Now, which is my vote really? Okay, my vote, which I have verified, is the VVPAT slip. So why is it that the VVPAT slip is not counted? Why are you counting something which between which there is a gap? Okay, and the moment there are gaps of this kind, they are liable to be exploited. Have they actually been exploited? I don't know, but they can be, and they are liable to be exploited, and therefore it makes sense not to have it because it violates the fundamental principle. I have verified the VVPAT slip, and you are counting the electronic vote. Okay? That's very basic, and strangely, the Supreme Court also does not seem to have realized this. So, and the case that went on and on and on, and we have this complicated system of post verification after counting of the uh, the microchips and all that. I mean, that is actually quite nonsensical. If you simply had a process which was cleaner, it would have been much easier to just count the VVPAT slips for this time. And there is a simple way in which you can actually improve the system and retain this principle. And that is just modify the VVPAT box, which is a minor modification, where instead of the VVPAT slip falling into the box, it comes out. The voter looks at it, verifies that everything is okay. Yes, it has printed the symbol and the name of the candidate to whom I voted, and then puts it in the VVPAT box himself or herself. Okay? So the entire chain then is clean. Then you count the VVPAT votes and you can cross check it with whatever is happening right now. No real change is needed except minor changes in the VVPAT box. And this will be a much cleaner system and much less liable to be exploited because the gap goes away. Right? So, and since I'm verifying the vote and I put it in the box and you are counting that vote, the chances of, many kinds of hacks or whatever people want to call it, they become impossible. They just don't exist. Okay. But for the longest of times, the election commission, and not just the current one, but even earlier, have kept on insisting that they will count only the the electronic vote. And there have been multiple Supreme Court cases on this. Then the VVPAT system came in place, and all those things have happened. And the simple answer is count the VVPAT votes. Okay, it will take a little longer. Maybe it takes 2 days to count them. But when you have an election going from the middle of March till the 1st of June, 2 days is not a lot of time. Plus, the principle of the thing is important. Okay, so that's the first thing. Why is the Election Commission so insistent on not counting the VVPAT slips? And there are minor things you can do. You can print barcodes on it so that the counting is less error prone. Human error can be reduced. So you can just scan the barcodes. Right? Each candidate has a unique barcode, and you can simply count that. So all this makes me feel extremely uncomfortable. Okay, so that's the first problem I have. The second problem is, of course, the way the whole thing went this time. Okay? We had this percentage numbers being given out in terms of how many people have actually voted. Okay? And these percentages are for the entire phase. Okay? Why is that the case? Why don't you tell me booth-wise? You have all the data with you. You cannot calculate those percentages if you don't have the booth level data. And it's clear that the booth level data is available. As soon as the election is over, the voting is over, the presiding officer there in the booth, records things in a form 17C, and that information can be uploaded to the site, even using a mobile app. That's trivial to do. So the data is pretty much immediately available, and almost always the Election Commission released some kind of data in terms of percentages, at least in the first few phases of the election, saying this is the percentage of the vote. Okay, and that percentage is for all the constituencies which went uh, for the poll on that particular phase. There is no data constituency wise, there is no data booth wise, when actually all that data is actually available. So why don't you give it to us? Because that can be then cross-checked later on while counting and all that. I'll come to that in a minute. So first of all, this is very strange. First of all, the actual counts are not given. Only the total only the percentages are given, and then comes the real shocker. These percentages, which are typically released between about 7 to 8 p.m. on the day the voting took place, keep getting revised. Okay, they keep getting revised later in the evening on the same day. Typically at 10 p.m. there may be another announcement of, and there's a changed value, and then again maybe slightly later there is another changed value being reported. This has happened in a few phases, and finally there is a final value which is given as the the absolute value, that is the so-called correct value. Now, the discrepancy is that in all the phases, in every phase, the values both for individual states and for the entire phase, there are huge differences. Huge differences. So let me look at this. I have made a note of some of this. For example, in phase one, there is a difference of 6.14% between what was given out at the first thing, which was given out at around 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. between that time, and the final one, which is, it was 60, and then it changed to 66.14. Okay. And not just that, in some states, those numbers are completely ridiculous. For example, in Maharashtra, the difference is greater than 8%. This is in the phase one. In Tamil Nadu, it is greater than 7%. It's almost 7.5%. In Lakshadweep, it is 25%. Similarly, phase two has a difference of 5.75. Phase three has a difference of 4.23. These are final numbers, okay? And it's always positive in the sense that the final numbers are always much more than the initial numbers. Now, why is this happening? Okay, they have given some generic answers because of communication, because of this, that, and the other. That is hand waving. That is not a reason. You say exactly where the errors are, because if you had uploaded all the data right at the start, people could have easily seen where the errors are. And there is no explanation. First of all, there is no explanation, and of course, there is no detailed data also. So when you kind of look at all this and you look at the cumulative difference, we are looking at a difference of 4.72% votes, okay, which works out to more than 4.65 crore votes extra have been there, and we have no explanation of how they have come about. Okay, so there is a difference of more than 4 crore 65 lakh votes in the entire election. These are the extra votes which are the final values tally compared to the initial tallies. And if you kind of see what does this mean, this means that per constituency, we have 543 parliamentary constituencies. If you do this simple division, you will get more than 85,000 votes per constituency are now extra. They have come between the time when the election was over, the phase was over, around 7 to 8 p.m. on most of the phases. And then the final tally, which is almost always reported very late. The first phase was reported after 11 days, second phase after 4 days. As a matter of fact, first and second, I think, were reported together. And almost in all the cases, the delay was, minimum of 3 to 4 days. An average I have calculated is about 5 days. So it has taken the Election Commission 5 days to come up with a final tally. Why is this? If the electronic thing is what you are counting, and that is what the presiding officer presses the button and sees what is the total vote that has been total number of votes cast in that booth, and uploads that information, then why is it that it's taking this long to give us the actual numbers? And why are the numbers changing so much? This has not, to the best of my knowledge, happened in earlier elections. There have been some changes, and it's possible there could be recording of the actual numbers and all that. We'll grant that. But why is there this huge difference? And no explanation. Even if there is a difference and if there were problems, tell us why it happened. And that's one of the reasons why I feel very uncomfortable. There's nothing to tell us why it has happened. And then we come to the fact that this whole process has been, very strange. The final Supreme Court ruling, I think the final case that was there, I think Justice Khanna and Datta were there, and they went into this elaborate mechanism whereby they said that if you have uh, doubts, then you can ask for a check of the actual EVMs. Okay, and I think there have been about 11 people who have asked for it. Largely, I guess, also because of the fact that it is a very costly process. It's 46,000 rupees plus GST for each uh, count. That means for each EVM. EVM includes all three. Uh, that is the ballot unit, the control unit, and the VVPAT unit. And I'm assuming the SLU, the symbol loading unit. So it is 46,000 rupees you have to pay for one such thing. So if you count whatever, some 10 of them, you're going to pay 4.6 lakhs plus GST. So anyway, so that is the situation. Uh, and the so-called SOP for this, the administrative SOP, was released on, I think, 1st of June, if I'm not wrong, when actually the counting was on 4th of June, and you were supposed to file your complaint within a week. The other thing is strange. The technical SOP was not released at all until I think very recent. So the technical SOP has been released, if I'm not wrong, maybe on a few days ago, maybe 4 5 days ago. I don't remember the exact date. And it's a strange kind of technical SOP. It basically does not do any checking of the chips, okay, the burnt microcontrollers, which are supposed to be what is supposed to be checked. All it does is just go through the whole election process by casting 500 votes or 1100 votes and so on. So the whole thing is that you just rerun an election, dummy election, on that particular EVM configuration. You can change the configuration if you want. You can use a different VVPAT box, or you can use a different control unit box or whatever. But what you're doing is essentially just rerunning the election and then checking something that you do at the beginning of the voting, right? When the voting is starting, that's what happens. The presiding officer and representatives of the candidates do some voting to check that the system is working correctly, properly. Okay? And then that's supposed to be wiped out, and then the whole thing is the election starts, the voting starts. So the same process is being repeated. Okay? I don't understand how this is actually a check of the actual, whether the code has been uh, is correct or not. Because the code could be time sensitive. Okay, something runs when the date is a particular date, and if it's not that date, something else runs. That's possible. I'm not saying that's happening. Please understand. All I'm saying is that the whole process seems to be opaque and pointless. And then I come to the last problem here, and that again is a strange problem. All this electronic stuff is happening. All you're saying that is nothing can be, it can't be hacked, etc., etc. And what happens in 540, if I'm not wrong, 540 out of the 543 constituencies, the votes cast and the votes counted do not match. In about 140 plus constituencies, the total number of votes counted is more than the total number of votes cast. And in some remaining almost 360 or so constituencies, or maybe more, the votes counted is less than the votes cast. Okay, so some people have given some explanations about why the second thing can happen. That's the votes counted are less than the votes cast. That could be because, okay, a particular EVM combination fails during counting. So maybe that whole box is not counted, or that whole unit is not counted, or the EVM, the control unit has not been cleaned up after the dummy trial vote just before voting starts. And so that is also a reason why you may not count that particular box. So there could be reasons why that happens, but I fail to totally understand how can you count more votes than there have been votes cast. No explanation again. There has been no explanation regarding that. So again, this is a strange situation. So given all this, it makes me feel that, this kind of a system is not something that we should stand for. The Election Commission is a constitutional body. It is answerable to us, the voter and the citizen, as to how all these things are happening. Why are they happening? Why is it that you have discrepancies in 540 of these constituencies? And can you then give us the details? Clearly, you can give us the details because you are counting them box by box, that is booth by booth. So tell us which booth, what was the problem? Why is it that in some constituencies there are so many more votes counted, and some constituencies there are so many less votes counted? Tell us, give us the data, and be transparent about the reasons why it has happened. And then, yes, maybe that will help you to improve the system and make things public so that the system can be improved. Don't try to, just maintain so much time, energy, and probably money has been wasted in trying to defend an indefensible system. Then you can easily make things public and improve the system with minor changes, perhaps. Okay. And that is the reason why I have signed this particular notice. And I think it is necessary for the Election Commission to stand up and tell us why all these things have happened. Give us reasons. Give us all the raw data. I don't see why that raw data can't be given to people. It will help in the counting process. It will help the people who to decide polling agents, to decide counting agents. All those things can be made much more easy for candidates and for general public who want to understand what is happening. If you give data openly without hiding things. The moment you hide things, there are question marks. Why are you doing it when the data is actually available? So I find that very strange. I would never do it as an academic. If I was designing a system and I wanted to be a transparent, trusted system, you would make that system open. Okay, tell me what's going wrong. Here is the system. Here is what happened this time. And okay, this is why it went wrong. Let's improve it next time. I never see that happening. And it can't happen if you sort of hide things from us. So whether there has been manipulation or not, I do not know. That is something that can only be done if there's an investigation, a detailed investigation. But this behavior of the Election Commission is not acceptable. It's simply not acceptable. You have to behave in a way where you are transparent and you explain whenever things go wrong, things do go wrong, explain why they have gone wrong. And that develops trust. So right now, I don't trust them. That's why I've signed it. Thank you.